Welcome back, everyone. And so I'm with Aisling White from Limerick today. And in part one, we were talking about Aisling and in her college years and how she got back into your diabetes care, and you had a meeting in your GP. So you were attending your GPs to have your blood work done so that you were keeping up this ruse with yourself that you were taking care, well, that you were engaging in your healthcare. So the nurse had asked you what your insulin to carb ratio was.
So yeah, that was the dreaded question. So I didn't really even keep up the facade at that point. I was like, okay, honestly, I don't know, but I know if I look at this plate of food, I can guess how many units I need, and that's all I need to know. So I would just look at a plate of food and say that's 12, that's 8. So I was like, yeah, I'm doing pretty good. So she took my blood and she was like, okay, let's just sit down for a minute because we have a bit more time in this meeting. And my heart was like racing. I was like, oh no, here we go again. Why are your numbers this bad? So she asked for my blood test here, and I was like, oh, this will tell the truth. So went down through it and basically said to me that her daughter was a type 1 diabetic as well. So immediately I was put at ease because I was like, oh, this is a person that actually knows what it's like to live with this condition. So she offered to continue educating me and taught me how to carb count, taught me how to find my insulin sensitivity factor, taught me how to change my background insulin, all things that I did not know how to do. And basically taught me how to advocate for myself. So like I said, I was always afraid to talk to any professional about what I needed. I couldn't say it because of the experiences that I'd had before. But she brought me around to that and helped me to advocate to get a sensor for myself and to get a pump and just to be able to manage this as best I could. So I do owe a lot to her.
And yeah, because I mean, that really was, it's like fate intervening and you meeting this person, and it basically changed, was the turning point in your diabetes and changed your life. And I do want to add that you were trying to re-engage with the healthcare service, but because you had missed a few appointments, you were back on the waiting list, and that took, what, a year or two to get back into the adult service?
Yeah, 2 years to get back onto the adult service. So that it was my own fault for not attending the appointments. But when I was ready to re-engage, it took 2 years to re-engage. Yeah. But I was engaging with support groups and things like that in the interim.
Yeah. So, yeah, let's talk about the support groups, because by the time you came across the Limerick support group, you'd finished college, hadn't you?
Had I finished college?
How long ago did you graduate?
I graduated 4 years ago now, so 2017.
Okay.
And the first Limerick diabetes meeting was in Yeah, I was finished college actually.
Yeah, because you told me that you started on an insulin pump in 2017.
Yes.
And it was around 2016 that you had that appointment with the GP. So, so you were living in Limerick at this point. You decided that to stay put in Limerick and not go back to Cork. And yeah, do you want to talk about how you came across the Limerick support group?
I suppose I had started joining groups on Facebook. So I joined the Diabetes in Ireland group, and I saw that the Clare group had organised a meetup inside in a hotel in Limerick City. So I was like, oh great, I get to go meet people and just talk to people who are actually living through this experience. So I brought my partner with me at the time because I was just still terrified of the bad diabetic that I thought I was. So went to the meeting, got to talk with some lovely people. And at that meeting, Avril, and I'm not sure was Jill there as well, but they stood up and they said, we're going starting a Limerick support group. Our first meeting is on this date in the Strand Hotel. Feel free to come along if you want. And immediately I was like, that is what I need. So I took down the date and went along to the first meeting, and it was just amazing. So nice to sit in that room full of diabetics, and there was no real structure at the start. We all introduced ourselves and what insulins we were using because there was nobody on pumps at the time. And we just started chatting. So it was literally like, how do you find this? And suddenly I was finding that there were other people encountering the same problems that I was encountering. And I was like, okay, so I'm not the only one coming up against this problem. There are other people coming into problems with their diabetes. I'm not a bad diabetic. I just need to figure this out. Yeah. And for me, that was a massive turning point. I was like, oh my God, this really is a problem everyone struggles with. And this support group allows people just to let that out and realize, okay, we're in a community of people who are all going through the same thing. So immediately I wanted to be involved in that. So after a few meetings, I started organizing events with the girls, and we have an amazing group of people, like seriously gotten some of the best friends of my life out of that group.
Excellent. So and you're actually one of the organizers now, and you're organizing exercise classes and Zumba classes for everybody, which is amazing. So well done you.
Yeah, and those are open to everyone nationally because they're happening on Zoom at the moment. So if you go on to the type 1 adults exercise support group or something, it's along those lines on Facebook, you can get access to those lessons, which are really nice and just nice to exercise. Again, exercise was a massive barrier for me. That's why I kind of went with the exercise classes, because every time I would exercise, I would hypo. And I was so afraid to go exercising. I was like, do you know what? I might not. And I started doing this barrier again. So when we started in the Limerick group going to exercise classes together in person. But then when lockdown came, that all fell apart. So the girls and I came up with a walking challenge, and now it's grown on to the exercise classes.
Excellent. And I'll post the links to those groups in the description below below this video on YouTube. So don't worry about that.
Thank you.
So then from support group then, because like I'm in the Clare group and you're in the Limerick group, and we're kind of closely aligned because many people in both our counties attend the services in the Midwest. And so then you started to get involved with the advocacy, and I'd just like to say that you are kind of my counterpart in the Limerick area. So we've been coordinating with each other for the last year, 2 years, probably 2 years, on, targeting TDs and county councillors and what we can do to highlight the concerns in the area. So do you want to talk about how that kind of became of interest to you?
Yeah, so like I say, when I started getting educated by that person who was willing enough to teach me, I came back up to the Limerick support group, and there were people who were still injecting on the, that's roughly this much units. And I was like, okay. And I could see people encountering the same problems that I was encountering. And I was like, okay, if you go into the hospital and ask them for a carb counting training program, you can learn how to do this, and it'll become so much easier, and your life will be, it's just what it did for me, basically. And I found out that there was no carb counting program in the Limerick Hospital, or there was no pump clinic. And I was I just couldn't believe it. I was like, what? Why isn't there one here? There's one in Cork. Why isn't there one here? And then I found out that that is a much bigger problem on a national scale as well.
Yeah.
But feel like I just wanted to get those services for the people in my group so that they could have the same experience that I had and that same new lease of life. So I think
And
in the middle of that,
also, yeah, also
yeah,
to point out that you're living in Limerick now and you are traveling down to Cork for your
well, yes,
diabetes care. So having that service in Limerick where you live, you know, would be hugely beneficial to you as well as the, what, 2,000 people, other people in the county who live with type 1.
exactly. And there are still many people paying to go privately to Galway or Cork or Dublin and traveling those long distances and paying for their appointment, when this should be available in the Limerick Hospital publicly, the exact same as it is in the Galway Hospital, same in the Cork Hospital. So yeah, I think through all of that experience, somewhere along the line, I managed to connect with you and find out that you were also fighting for this. So we kind of connected on that front and have been pushing ever since, and
Yep.
still doing it.
And then, so I want to talk about the latest involvement was you were one of two Irish representatives now in the International Diabetes Federation's Young Leaders in Diabetes program. So let's talk about that now. How did you, well, I know how you came across it, but what interested you about the program?
Yeah, so like you said, I'd started advocating here in Limerick and really only learned that word advocating once I started doing it. But I saw the program advertised and I was like, this is a great opportunity because you get to meet people all around the world who are advocating, who are trying to get better services or trying to improve lives of people with diabetes. So I saw the IDF Youth Leadership Lab advertised. I went onto their website, and the first thing that they say on their website is uniting the voices of people with diabetes, speaking with one voice, improving the lives of people with diabetes. And I was like, this sounds like what I like. So I looked up the Youth Leadership Lab program, and basically it's a 6-month long course, basically, where you meet once a week and you get to hear from advocates who work all over the world of all different ages and the programs that they run, how they started them up. You get to talk with youth advocates who are also completing the program from all around Europe and elsewhere. And get to speak with them about the projects that they're running. So it really is a great chance in that way to network with people, to get to know people from other countries, how they run their programs, and to see how to become a leader or an advocate for diabetes. So yeah, that really attracted me to it. And then once we started the program, they told us that we have to develop our own project based on advocacy on a European level. So that sounded really interesting. So we got a presentation from 3 past members of the Youth Leadership Lab, and they basically presented their project ideas to us. And then we chose which project that we'd like to be involved in. So from now until up near the end of the year, we're going to be working in groups on these advocacy programs and hopefully launching them in whatever way that we see fit. So some programs might just be a social media campaign, some might be official documents. It really depends on what the program needs. So yeah, it's interesting. The topics are really varied. We're like looking at digitalization, artificial intelligence.
Wow.
It's really pressing stuff and stuff that will impact the lives of diabetics in the coming years. So it's really good to get to look at it now.
Wow. And we had so much to talk about in this interview, and we're basically going to wrap up now. But so after the initial 6 months, what happens then? Do you stay involved, or it's up to yourself then to take on your own project?
There are options. So, for example, the project that my group is looking at, we're reckoning that it might take more than the 6 months to actually complete this project if we want to do it well. So if the group are willing, I think we can continue to work on that project past the Youth Leadership Lab and really bring it to fruition at a later date. And there are other opportunities to get involved with IDF Europe and to keep pushing their messages of uniting voices of people with diabetes and fighting basically for the rights of diabetics. So I'm really interested in that. So I hope to keep involved with them in the future.
Excellent. So basically you were one to watch in diabetes in Ireland.
We shall see.
So Ashton, and then because you got involved in the IDF, you ended up joining the National Diabetes Ireland National Advocacy Group, which means that we are working even together even more because I'm on that group as well. So Ashton, thank you very, very much for joining me today. Is there any last words you want to say, or are you okay to wind up this interview here and now?
I suppose just for me, from my experience, the main thing I will say to people is don't be afraid when you go into an endo's office, a nurse's office, anyone's office. Bring someone with you if you want. Bring your partner, bring your sister, bring your mother, whoever you want to bring in with you if you can't do that alone. And just let them know, write down on a list what you want to talk about. Any way that you can let them know what you need, because that's what they're there for. We're not there to sit idly and be talked to. We want to engage in it. So let them know you want to engage. That's been the biggest turning point for me. So I hope that helps someone else.
Excellent. I think it will. And I'm so glad I asked you that question. Ashton, thank you so much for giving me so much of your time today and over the last couple of weeks that we've been chatting about this interview. And I'll post some links in the description below this video for anybody who wants to follow up on anything that we've talked about today. And thank you.
Thank you so much.